I never thought I'd be the guy saying something like this. But here I am. I have been married to my wife for 10 years. We have a 5-year-old son together. If you asked anyone who knows us, they'd say we were the stable couple, the kind that others look and think they figured it out. We had our ups and downs like anyone, but I loved her, truly loved her. She's a photographer, creative, independent, full of energy. I'm more the steady type. I work in IT, make sure the bills are paid, go for morning runs, take my son to kindergarten, cook dinner when she's too tired. We always felt like a good team. At least, that's what I thought. The cracks started to show a few months ago, though I didn't see them for what they were. She became distant, not outright cold, but different. Shorter with me, like every word I said annoyed her. Always busy with work, always tired. I kept telling myself it was just stress, maybe burnout. She often mentioned a new colleague from her studio, some guy I never met but kept hearing about in passing. I didn't think much of it. She has lots of creative friends, most of them guys. It never bothered me. Then came the trip. She told me she had a photo shoot out of town, 3 days away. I didn't question it. Why would I? I stayed home with our son, handled everything as usual. Cooking, cleaning, runs, bedtime stories. I even felt a little proud, like I was holding down the fort so she could pursue her career. I didn't know it at the time, but that trip would change everything. She came back from her trip like nothing had happened, hugged our son, kissed me on the cheek, tossed her suitcase in the corner. I asked how the shoot went, and she just said, "Exhausting, but fine." That was it. No stories, no excitement, which struck me as odd because usually she loves to tell me about her work. But again, I brushed it off. A few days later, I was scrolling through my phone when I saw a notification pop up from a number I didn't recognize. It was a photo. At first, I didn't even register what I was looking at. And then my stomach dropped. It was her, my wife, naked. Not just naked, but posed. Intimate, raw, in a way I had never seen her before. And the message attached to it? Thought you should know where she really was. I stared at it for what felt like forever, my hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped the phone. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. A million things raced through my head, but the loudest was, this isn't real. This can't be real. But it was. That photo shoot, she went on, it didn't exist. She had spent 3 days in a sanatorium with that colleague, the one she mentioned so casually. And the proof was right in front of me, seared into my brain forever. I didn't even know who sent the photo. Him? Some twisted brag? Or someone else who knew and wanted me to find out? Either way, the truth was out now, and my world, our world, shattered. I don't even remember how long I sat there with that photo on my phone before I finally worked up the nerve to confront her. My chest felt like it was caving in. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. But I couldn't just pretend I hadn't seen it. That night, after we put our son to bed, I asked her straight out, "Were you really on a photo shoot?" She blinked at me, almost confused, then gave this little laugh like I'd asked something ridiculous. Of course. Why would you even ask that? So I showed her the photo. For a moment, she froze. Just a split second, but I saw it. The flicker in her eyes. Guilt. Shock. Something. But then, just as quickly she shifted. Her expression hardened. Her tone turned sharp. "What the hell are you spying on me? Going through my phone? Who's sending you this? This is insane." She flipped it back on me. Like I was the crazy one. Like I was the one destroying our marriage. I kept saying, "Just tell me the truth. Please. I need to hear it from you." And she kept denying, deflecting, twisting. She said the photo was taken out of context, that I was paranoid, that someone was trying to ruin what we have. She even started crying, saying she couldn't believe I didn't trust her after everything we'd been through. And I cracked. I doubted myself. For a moment, I actually thought maybe I was losing it. Maybe I was reading too much into things. But deep down, I knew. I knew what I saw. I knew she was lying to my face. And it broke something inside me. After that night, I couldn't function like a normal person anymore. I went through the motions, work, took my son to kindergarten, making dinner, but inside I was hollow, like someone had reached in and scooped out everything that made me me. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, my heart pounding. Sometimes I'd roll over and just look at her sleeping next to me, wondering, who are you? Wondering if the last 10 years had been a lie. She kept acting like I was the problem. She'd get cold whenever I tried to bring it up, saying I was obsessing and ruining the marriage with my paranoia. And when she wasn't dismissive, she was icy. Silent treatment. Short replies. Like I was an annoyance she had to tolerate. It messed with my head so badly that I started questioning my own sanity. Maybe I was crazy. Maybe I had imagined things. But then I'd remember that photo, burned into my mind, and the confusion would twist into rage, then collapse into despair. The worst part? I still loved her. Even through all the lies, even knowing what she'd done, I couldn't just turn it off. I'd look at her with our son, the way he clung to her, the way she made him laugh, and my chest would ache. I wanted so badly for our family to stay whole. But at the same time, I was drowning, living with someone who could betray me so deeply, then look me in the eye and tell me it was my fault. It was torture. I don't think I've ever felt so small, so broken. It didn't stop after that first confrontation. In fact, it got worse. Every time I tried to talk about what happened, she'd turn it around on me. If I asked a simple question, where were you today? Or who were you with? She'd sigh like I was some paranoid loser and say things like, God, do you hear yourself? You're suffocating me. When I pushed harder, she'd get angry. You're imagining things. You built this fantasy in your head, and now you're punishing me for it. And the thing is, she said it with such conviction that I started doubting myself. Like maybe I was seeing patterns that weren't there. Maybe my brain was inventing things out of fear. I started apologizing to her. Apologizing for catching her in a lie. That's the cruelest part of it all. She made me believe I was the one destroying us. She acted like she was the victim, like she was being unfairly accused. Sometimes she'd cry, saying things like, I can't live like this with you constantly doubting me. And I'd break down and promise to do better. Promise to trust her more. Meanwhile, late at night, I'd hear her phone buzzing. She'd take it to the bathroom and lock the door. She said it was work stuff. I wanted so badly to believe her, but my gut screamed otherwise. Still, she had me twisted so tight in guilt and shame that I stopped asking questions. I started carrying all of it alone, the suspicion, the fear, the pain, and she carried on like nothing was wrong. The thing about lies is, eventually they start to leak through the cracks, no matter how careful someone is. For months, she kept up the act, playing the tired, overworked wife, making me feel guilty for every doubt I had. But small things began to give her away. She started dressing differently for work, outfits she'd never worn before, more makeup, perfume she hadn't touched in years. I told myself maybe she just wanted to feel good about herself, but in the pit of my stomach, I knew it wasn't for me. There were missed calls from numbers I didn't recognize. Text messages she cleared the second they popped up. Once, I saw his name, the colleague she'd mentioned before, flash on her screen. She snatched the phone from my hand before I could read it and snapped, Why are you invading my privacy? Do you have no respect for me at all? And again, I ended up apologizing for wanting to know why another man was calling my wife late at night. But the biggest crack came one afternoon when she thought I wasn't paying attention. She was laughing at her phone, a kind of laugh I hadn't heard from her in months. Light, carefree, almost girlish, the kind of laugh she used to have with me. And in that moment, I realized something brutal. Whatever joy she used to find in me, she had given to someone else. I felt myself dying inside, but I said nothing. I just turned away, pretending not to notice, because admitting it out loud would make it too real. I think she knew, though. She knew I was breaking, and she let it happen. If it weren't for our son, I don't know how I would have made it through those months. He was the only thing keeping me grounded, the only reason I didn't walk out the door and never come back. Every morning, I'd wake up to his little footsteps running into our room, his tiny arms wrapping around me. Daddy pancakes, or Daddy play cars? And in those moments, I'd force myself to smile, to be the dad he deserved, even if inside I was falling apart. I kept telling myself, don't let him see. Don't let him feel the tension, the silence, the Cold War brewing in this house. I tried to make things normal. Trips to the park, bedtime stories, silly games. I wanted his childhood to feel safe, even if my marriage was crumbling. But kids aren't stupid. They feel it. He'd look at us sometimes, his eyes darting between me and her when we barely spoke over dinner. Once he asked, "Daddy, are you mad at Mommy?" And it nearly broke me. I swallowed it down, told him, "No, buddy, everything's fine." But inside I was screaming, because everything was not fine. The cruelest part was watching her with him. She could still flip the switch, still be the warm, loving mom. She had endless laughter and patience for him. But for me, only silence and contempt. I felt invisible in my own home, like a ghost haunting the life we had built together. And I stayed. For him. It all came to a head one evening. I don't even know what set it off. Something small, like me asking if she'd be home for dinner. She snapped at me, her voice sharp. "Do you have to track every second of my life? You're suffocating me." I just lost it. Months of silence, of swallowing the pain, of doubting myself. It all exploded at once. I shouted. I asked her outright if she loved him, if she wanted to leave me, if all these years together meant nothing. She didn't deny it this time. Not fully. Instead, she rolled her eyes and said, "You've already made up your mind about me. Nothing I say will matter. You ruined this marriage with your paranoia." That sentence cut deeper than anything else. Because she was right about one thing. Nothing she said mattered anymore. I couldn't trust her. I couldn't believe a word from her lips. I remember standing there, my hands shaking, my throat raw from yelling, and she just looked at me like I was pathetic, like I was an obstacle in her way. For the first time, I saw it clearly. She didn't respect me. She didn't fear losing me. She had already chosen him. And in that moment, I realized I couldn't keep pretending. I couldn't keep living as a ghost in my own life. Something inside me cracked, and the man I used to be was gone. After that night, I couldn't live in limbo anymore. I needed to know, for my own sanity, for my son's future. So I started looking. I went through phone records, old messages, her calendar. I felt disgusting doing it, sneaking around like some criminal in my own house. But I couldn't survive on lies anymore. Every time her phone buzzed, I felt my chest tighten. Every time she said she was working late, my stomach twisted. And then I found it, buried in her email drafts, unsent but saved, was a message to him. It wasn't explicit, but it was intimate in a way no wife should ever write to another man. She wrote about how he made her feel alive again, how being with him was like breathing after years underwater. I just sat there staring at the words, my vision blurring with tears. It was worse than any photo, because photos could be explained away, twisted into lies. But those words, those were her thoughts, her feelings, straight from her heart. It was undeniable. She wasn't just cheating on me physically. She had already left me emotionally. I closed the laptop and went to the bathroom. I looked at myself in the mirror and didn't recognize the man staring back. Hollow eyes, trembling lips, a face carved by exhaustion and betrayal. And I whispered, "She doesn't love you anymore." Saying it out loud made it real. And I broke down, sobbing quietly so our son wouldn't hear. This time, I didn't tiptoe around it. I had proof. I had her words burned into my head. I waited until our son was asleep. Then I put the laptop in front of her. I opened the draft and asked, "Do you love him?" For a moment, she just stared at the screen. No excuses, no fake tears this time. Just silence. And that silence told me everything I needed to know. When she finally spoke, her voice was cold. "You went through my private things? Do you realize how invasive that is?" That was it. No denial. No apology. Just flipping it back on me again, like I was the villain. I begged her, actually begged, "Please, just be honest with me. Do you want to leave? Do you want him instead of me?" And she said the cruelest thing I've ever heard in my life. I don't know if I want you at all anymore. It felt like someone had driven a knife into my chest and twisted it slowly. 10 years together, a child, a whole life built side by side, and she couldn't even say she wanted me. Not even a lie to soften the blow. I couldn't breathe. My hands shook so badly I thought I'd collapse. I asked her why. Why him? Why now? Her answer? Because he makes me feel alive. You don't. That was it. That was the truth I had been searching for. And it destroyed me. The house felt empty after that night, even though we were both in it. I couldn't look at her without seeing him. Every laugh, every touch, every shared glance she once gave me now belonged somewhere else. I started avoiding her, not because I wanted to punish her, but because I couldn't stand the sight of her. I kept our interactions strictly about our son. Nothing else. I cried alone in the bathroom, in the car, in the shower. I didn't know where I ended and the betrayal began. I felt like I was losing my mind, spiraling into a darkness I didn't know I could survive. She continued living her life as normal, chilling on the couch, scrolling through her phone, laughing at messages I didn't see. And every day, the guilt and confusion she instilled in me replayed like a broken record. You're paranoid. You're suffocating me. You're ruining this marriage. I wanted to scream at her, to make her feel even a fraction the pain she caused me. But I couldn't. I couldn't risk scaring our son. Couldn't risk being the angry, broken man she painted me as. So I suffered in silence, a ghost in my own home, while she carried on like everything was fine. And the worst part? I still loved her. I still ached for the woman I thought I knew, the one I had built a life with. But the woman before me now was a stranger, someone who had made her choice, and it wasn't me. I didn't know what to do. Every night I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, asking myself the same questions over and over. Do I fight for this marriage? Can I ever trust her again? Or do I accept that she's gone, even if she's still physically here? The mortgage, our son, the years we shared, all of it felt like chains. I loved her. I really did. And I wanted to believe she could come back, that maybe this was a phase, a mistake. But everything in my gut, everything I had painfully uncovered, told me otherwise. I started thinking about leaving, about carving a life for myself and my son where betrayal didn't hang over our heads like a storm cloud. But the thought of facing her, explaining why I couldn't stay, terrified me. She had already made me feel insane for doubting her. How could I be sure I'd be believed? And yet, staying meant living in a house full of lies. Watching her smile at our son, watching her flirt with her phone, hearing her insist she was a victim while I crumbled inside, that was slowly killing me. I realized I had two choices. One, fight for a marriage that may no longer exist and risk losing myself completely. Two, accept the betrayal, protect my son, and rebuild a life where I could breathe again. I didn't have an answer yet, but for the first time in months, I felt a flicker of clarity. I could no longer live in the fog she created. After weeks of sleepless nights and endless internal debates, I knew I had to do something. Not for her, not for us, for me and my son. I started documenting everything. The messages, the emails, the moments she lied about work or trips. I had proof now, undeniable evidence of her betrayal. I didn't want revenge. I wanted clarity, a foundation to make the next steps decisive and safe. I spoke to a lawyer about custody and the mortgage, just to understand my options. It was terrifying, thinking about the life we had built possibly fracturing, thinking about facing the consequences of leaving. But every conversation reinforced the same truth. I had a right to protect myself and my child. I also began leaning on friends, ones I trusted, who knew the situation. Just talking, hearing their voices, helped me remember who I was outside of her betrayal. And slowly, I started reclaiming little pieces of myself. The mornings where I made coffee just for me, the walks in the park with my son where I didn't feel watched or judged, the quiet nights where I could cry alone without pretending. It didn't heal the pain. Not yet, but it was the first step toward survival. I realized I couldn't force her to love me again. I couldn't fix what was broken in her heart. All I could do was protect what mattered most, our son and my own sanity. The days after taking action were hard. Every small routine felt like walking through fire, but I started noticing something I hadn't felt in months: control over my own life. I began setting boundaries with her. Simple things at first. Conversations only about our son. No late-night arguments. No endless blame. I stopped trying to read her mind or decode every tone in her voice. I focused on what I could control: my reactions, my words, my presence in my son's life. I realized love wasn't enough to sustain a marriage if trust was gone. I still loved her more than I should, maybe, but I also loved myself and my son more. Slowly, I began to imagine a future where betrayal didn't define me, where I could laugh again, breathe without fear, and build a life that wasn't haunted by lies. Some nights, I cried thinking about what we had lost. Other nights, I smiled at the small victories: a peaceful bedtime with my son, a quiet morning where I felt like myself again, a day where I didn't think about her at all. It was the beginning of reclaiming my life, piece by piece, day by day. Looking back now, the pain is still there, sharp and real, but so is the clarity. Betrayal taught me more about myself than any happy day ever could. I learned that love without trust is fragile, that silence can be louder than screams, and that sometimes the people we think will never hurt us are capable of unimaginable betrayal. I also learned that survival doesn't mean revenge. It means reclaiming your life, protecting your heart, and being honest with yourself about what you can and cannot endure. I don't know what the future holds for my marriage. Maybe someday we'll find some form of peace, maybe not. But I do know that I will never again let someone make me question my own reality, my worth, or my sanity. To anyone going through something similar, it's okay to feel broken. It's okay to grieve. But don't forget yourself in the process. Protect what matters most: your dignity, your children, and your sense of self. And remember, surviving betrayal isn't just about enduring it. It's about emerging stronger, wiser, and more resilient than before. Even in the shadow of betrayal, life continues. And I am learning to live again.